He was under a tree the first time he saw him. Joshua had been playing his harp, singing songs of the Creator, when he drifted off to sleep and the lion came bounding toward him in his dreams. His mane was afire, he had a huge golden crown on his head and a strange wound on his arm. It would be a long time before Joshua saw him again, but that first encounter set something alight in his heart, like a pulling towards truth. 7 years later, Joshua woke in the home of his mother in the pasture heartlands. He was home on leave from the defense brigade, like many of his friends. "Get up, Sleepy," his mother called. "We have much to prepare for the harvest festival." Joshua leapt out of bed. The harvest festival was one of the most joyful of the year for the people of the pastures. He could almost taste the feast they would share with family and friends later that day. He hugged his mother and grabbed some of the sweet dough she was kneading as she laughed and swatted his hand. Just then, a neighbor burst into the kitchen. He had tears streaming down his face. "The Desert Clan," he shouted. "They have attacked the Southlands, killing and burning as they go. They have taken captives, our children, oh, our children." He collapsed to the floor as Joshua's mother let out a desperate wail. "Shearel! Oh, Joshua, save Shearel!" Joshua grabbed his sword and rushed to his horse. He saw many of his friends from the brigade riding with him. But the Southlands were many hours away. They would have to ride like the wind if they were to save their precious people. All he could see with eyes that stung through the sand and tears was the face of his younger sister Shearel. She had been in the Southlands taking care of an elderly aunt and had decided to stay with her to celebrate the harvest. Was she even alive? When they finally arrived in the Southlands, Joshua and his friends could see they were too late. Many were the people who had died. Many were the buildings burned. Eventually they found an old man wounded but conscious. "They took us by surprise," he said. "They have taken the children, the young women, even some elders." "Do you know Shearel?" Joshua asked in desperation. "A girl from the Golden City. She was looking after Mother Vine." "Yes, I know her," the old man replied, grabbing his arm. "She was taken with the others. I saw her comforting the children as they went. May the Creator have mercy on her soul." The first day passed in a blur of deep, uncontainable sorrow and rage mixed with the resolve to act. When Joshua finally slept, with the brigade's rescue plans churning in his head, he dreamed of the lion again. This time he was roaring a fearsome roar as a huge snake reared up and hissed at him venomously. His commander shook him awake. "Come, Joshua, you must hear the news." A secret scouting group had entered the desert lands overnight, and the news they had to tell made Joshua's heart sink. The captives were alive, but surrounded by traps. Worse than that, the desert army had placed their camp and the prisoners inside their most densely packed city. "They know we will never attack them when they are surrounded by their townspeople. Our code will not allow it. Even if we did attack, they would appeal to the island empire who would take their side and stop our efforts. We are thwarted." A few of the other soldiers hung their heads in despair. The desert army had been firing blazing arrows at the pasture people of the south for years, purposefully aiming at innocent farmers and their families. Whenever the brigade had taken action, the desert army appealed to the powerful island empire, claiming the brigade were to blame. Maybe it was because the desert lands were smaller and weaker than the pastures, that the empire always took their side. Or maybe it was something deeper. "We are not thwarted," said Joshua, rising to his feet. "We will warn their people to flee. We will ensure a refuge for them. We will enlist all our fighting men to gather here. We will send in scouts to dismantle their traps until it is safe for us to move in like a flood and destroy their evil army once and for all." "Remember," said a soldier to Joshua's right, "the desert army have finally revealed their true evil intentions. Surely the Empire will wake up now and believe them when they say they want to destroy us completely and take all the pasture lands for themselves." "Anything is possible," said the commander with a laugh. "Joshua, your plan is the right one. Everyone, prepare. Send out the call. Tonight, we will begin." 2 weeks had passed since that brutal attack on the innocent people of the Southlands. A scroll in the language of the Desert Clan had been smuggled into their city, warning the townspeople to flee, and already 2/3 had found their way to a refuge away from danger. The kings of the Island Empire had indeed responded in horror when they learned of the attacks, and promised support as the brigade sought to free the hundreds of innocent captives. The men of the pasture lands had gathered, and Joshua was surrounded by men, young and old, who had left their wives and children at home to take their stand against evil. Shirel was constantly on Joshua's mind, and he found himself reciting from the Holy Scrolls or crying out to the Creator in every spare moment, asking him to deliver her and the other captives safely home. However, the rescue mission had been halted. The scouting parties reported complicated traps beyond the brigade's expectations. The allies of the Desert Clan had proclaimed war on the Island Empire if the brigade invaded the desert lands, and the scouts reported that the desert army were preventing their own remaining townspeople from leaving the city on pain of death so they could hide behind their innocent and vulnerable. In addition, the desert army had received thousands of arrows from their allies that they were raining down on the Southlands constantly, and had assembled several catapults which could fire flaming spears over long distances, reaching even the Golden City. Joshua found the waiting unbearable. How could he wait another moment to go into the city and save his dear sister Shirel and the terrified children and others who were with her? He could not trust the desert army to treat them with any human kindness, considering the vicious way they had killed the people of the south. He could only hope that the Creator was protecting them as he and all the people of the pasture lands were praying daily. But then why hadn't the Creator protected them in the first place? That night, Joshua received his third dream. He could see the pasture lands. The Southlands were on fire, and all the mothers of the land were crying for their children. He saw the picture of a beautiful harp. A burning arrow flew from the desert army and set it ablaze, burning it to ash. Then the lion appeared. He was brighter than ever before, and his crown dripped with fragrant oil. He approached Joshua and said, "Pray that the enemy will fall into the pit he has dug." Joshua crouched from where he was lying in the dream and looked at the lion with awe. "I pray the enemy will fall into the pit that he dug." The lion stepped to the side and looked over his shoulder, where Joshua could see the desert soldiers digging a huge pit meant for the brigade. But suddenly the lion roared, and the huge snake from Joshua's last dream fell into the pit. The lion now turned to the harp that had been burned and breathed gently over it. The ashes came together in the air and were transformed again into a beautiful harp. The lion spoke to it softly. "Awake, harp and lyre, awaken the dawn." Joshua saw the sun about to break over the horizon behind the lion, and he heard the snake cry out in despair. Then Joshua woke up. Later that day, a tragedy struck. The desert army were firing one of their fiery spears towards the Golden City when the catapult backfired, setting the city ablaze and killing many of their own people. The desert army appealed to the Island Empire, claiming the brigade had deliberately fired on the townspeople, planning to kill the innocent. And the Empire had sent out scrolls to all their lands to say the brigade must be held back to protect the desert children's lives. In addition, one of the brigade scouts brought back terrible news. "We saw the desert army teaching the children of the townspeople to hate and kill the pasturelanders. They even brought out our captives for their children and others to spit on and mock." The soldiers of the brigade were furious. Has the Empire forgotten so soon that it was the desert army that attacked our innocent children just 2 weeks ago? Why are they so quick to believe those murderers instead of us? "The Island Empire still believes that we can make peace with the desert army," shouted another in frustration. "Why can't they see that if it was up to us, there would be peace? They don't believe the desert army's own proclamation that they will not stop attacking us until they have driven us from the pasturelands completely, or killed every last one of us and our children." But Joshua fell to his knees, and tears fell from his eyes. How could anyone be so evil to teach their own children the way of hatred? How could there be any hope for a peaceful future for the pasturelanders or the desert clan, when darkness was sown so early into their enemies' hearts? Joshua knew why the desert clan were angry with his people. They believed a strong lie that Joshua's people had stolen the pasturelands from the clan. But the pastures had been given to the pasturelanders by the Creator in ancient times. The pastures were their promised land. They had lived there long ago, but then they wandered the earth for many years. As they moved from country to country, being mistreated and rejected by many different nations, they always held hope in their hearts that they would one day return to the pastures and to their golden city. Meanwhile, the pastures had become a wasteland with few people living in it. The pastures were passed from hand to hand until the Island Empire took over and promised the land to Joshua's people once more. The pasturelanders were being treated terribly around the world, and so they flooded back to the pastures to find safety and a future at last. The desert clan also flooded into the pastures from the surrounding deserts, hoping to work for the Empire and to keep the pastures for their desert god. Eventually, they cruelly attacked the pasturelanders. The Island Empire broke the promise given to Joshua's people and abandoned them to their fate, as all the desert nations around the pastures declared war against Joshua's people. It seemed as if they would be wiped out forever, but the Creator did not forget the ancient promises he had made. By a miracle, Joshua's people won the war, and the pastures belonged to them once more. The desert people were enraged. They attacked all the remaining pasturelanders who had been living with them in the desert lands. They stole everything they had and violently threw them out from their nations. And so the community of pasturelanders grew and filled the pastures, transforming them into green and pleasant fields once again. But what happened to the desert clan? Some of them remained in the pastures, living side by side with the pasturelanders. Some of these were Joshua's friends and even served with him in the brigade. But those who had hated the pasturelanders and had left them to their destruction were not allowed to return. The desert people in the lands around would not allow them into their countries. "Stay where you are," they said. "One day we must take back the pastures for ourselves. We cannot allow our desert god to suffer disgrace." And so the desert clan camped at the borders of the pastures, consumed with a desire for revenge. Joshua knew the Creator could give them a hopeful future if they would turn to him. But the desert clan did not believe in the Creator, and their hearts were closed to him. The Island Empire sent the clan large amounts of gold to start a new life. But the clan spent everything they had plotting ways to destroy the pasturelanders, and so they stayed in poverty. The Island Empire had forgotten all these events. They believed the desert clan when they said, "We are in poverty because the pasturelanders stole our land." They often sided with the desert clan when they started trouble. Joshua thought that this time it would be different, that this time the desert army had gone too far, but he was wrong. Joshua had never felt so alone as he lay down to sleep that night. The Creator had brought the pasturelanders back to the land to be a blessing, but all everyone saw was trouble. Why were his people so hated? Would the world ever see the truth? As Joshua dreamed again, he saw the people of the pasturelands in the beginning. The Creator took their forefather to see the stars. He brought a bright star from him which filled the whole world with light. Then Joshua saw through time as the darkness fought against that light. The deep darkness suddenly transformed in Joshua's dream into the snake. The snake went through the world whispering lies into people's hearts. Sometimes as the people listened to him, the snake would bite them and they would become filled with poison. Some of his poison was directed especially to the people of the pasturelands, and Joshua could see the intense hatred in the snake's narrow eyes as he watched them. In the dream, the snake slithered to the desert land and bit many people, filling them with lies and hate. The snake rejoiced as they carried out his evil schemes. Joshua then watched as the lion came down from the sky, but as he touched the ground, he was transformed into a lamb. He shone so brightly, but the snake overcame him and bit him deeply on the arm. The lamb fell as if dead, and Joshua cried out. But suddenly light began to shine from him again, and he rose up as a lion once more. Now the lion had overcome the snake's poison, and he leapt over the earth, drawing out the venom from people's hearts and freeing them to shine like a multitude of stars. Joshua saw the lion watching over the pasturelands. He could see the lion's passion to fulfill his plans for the people to be a blessing to the whole earth. But the snake hissed furiously and spat poison until fire broke out in the pastures over and over again. At the end of the dream, the lion turned to Joshua and said, "Soon you will have 2 visitors. Then you will understand." As Joshua awoke, there was uproar in the camp. A soldier of the desert army had crossed over the border and stood among them. "Shoot him!" cried a man. "He means to kill us." "I mean you no harm," said the soldier, anxiously looking around. "I have escaped from the army. I will never fight for them again." "He is a spy!" shouted another brigade member. "Put him in chains." "I look for the one who has seen the lion!" shouted the soldier in desperation. Joshua hushed his friends. "It is I," he said. "I have seen the lion. Tell me what you came to say." The soldier fell to his knees. "Praise the Creator, it was real," he said, shaking. "Last night, I finished my shift with the catapult. I swear I wanted every one of you dead. But as I fell into sleep, I felt I was being strangled by a mighty viper. To my horror, I saw its fangs were in my neck. Suddenly, a great lion arrived and dug his claws into the viper, who let go and slithered backwards. The lion said to me so kindly, 'Do you really want to be free?' I had thought I had been fighting for freedom the whole time, but in his eyes, I could see that I was trapped and was being led to my death. 'Save me!' I cried. He touched my neck, and I could see all the poison being taken away. Then he breathed on me. I felt such love fill my heart. It was what I had been searching for my whole life. 'Go, love my people,' he said. 'Go into the pasturelands. There is one who has seen me there.' Suddenly I woke and found myself at the border, and now here I am." The brigade were in amazement. "Who is this lion, Joshua?" his commander asked. "I wish I could tell you," Joshua replied. "All I know for sure is that he is from the Creator and that he loves us." "Yes, he loves you," cried the soldier. "But we have been so evil. We have hated and murdered your innocent people. We have lied to the world, turning them against you. We have stolen money from our own people for their food and future and used it for weapons. We have also killed any of them who stood up to us, and we taught our children to hate. I pray that they would also be free from the snake like me, but I see now that if they stay in darkness, you must overcome the desert army. Rescue your captives, but rescue my people too. With the help of the Creator, we will do it, replied the commander. Joshua was amazed at all that had happened that day. Though they were still waiting to rescue his dear Shirel, he was filled with hope that the lion was real and was powerfully at work. As he slept that night, he had one last dream. He was looking down on the pasturelands from above. He could see the brigade gathered at the southern border. All over the pasturelands he could see bright winged warriors at work protecting the people. Suddenly he heard the sound of a ram's horn blasting. He saw the heavens opening and a lion strode out, followed by legion upon legion of winged warriors listening for his command. There were so many warriors the ground could not be seen, and the space between heaven and earth was thronging with them. Then the ram's horn blasted again, and Joshua could see over in the desert city that the enemy camp had been thrown into confusion. Then the horn blasted a third time, and the sound was taken up from nation to nation throughout the island empire and beyond by people everywhere that had been saved by the lion. At the sound of the blast, these people took up their positions and began to cry to the Creator and remind him of all his promises in the Holy Scroll. As their prayers were lifted up day and night, something like a flood of light came and lifted up the brigade of men and carried them into the desert city, sweeping away the darkness and breaking the snake's stronghold there. Victory! Joshua woke and stirred himself to tell his commander all that he had seen. As he walked through the camp, a horse was seen coming from the distance. A woman stepped down and ran to the men at the border. "Who are you?" asked the commander. "It is not safe for you here." "My name is Esther Ruth," said the woman. "I come from the island empire. Who here has seen the lion?" "The lion again," said the commander, looking at Joshua with questioning eyes. Joshua stepped forward. "Tell me what you have to say." The woman took a breath as she handed the reins of her horse over to the commander. "I came to the pasturelands because the lion saved me from the snake and from certain death. The people of the pasturelands gave us the Holy Scrolls and are chosen by the Creator to shine to all the world. I would not know the truth if it weren't for you. The lion himself came from you and will one day be king over the golden city and over all the world. I came to tell you that the lion is not only from the Creator. He and the Creator are one." Joshua was amazed. "Why do we not know him here in the pasturelands?" Esther Ruth replied with deep concern. "The snake has not just lied to the rest of the world, he has lied to you too. He knows that the Creator has chosen your people to release a powerful song that will save many people from the snake as the fight between dark and light meets its conclusion. People claiming to belong to the lion attacked you over the years, but this was not from the heart of the lion, rather from the poison of the snake. In the end, the Creator has promised you will all know him and be delivered." Joshua thought of his dream about the harp that was burned by the snake in his fury. "Why have you come?" Esther Ruth continued. "I came to the pasturelands to love and comfort your people. But as your brigade waits to go into battle, I felt so helpless. I cried out to the Creator, 'How can I make a difference to the captives and to your people?' I felt him say, 'Fight at the front line.' I don't know how to fight. I have never been trained with a sword, but tell me what to do and I will do it." Tears filled her eyes, and Joshua saw a courage that was born of love. Joshua grasped her shoulder and looked her in the eye as he said with excitement, "You have been called to a front line, but this is not it. Only when the lion overcomes the snake's hold on the desert land and its people will we win the victory. Do you know how to blow a ram's horn? Then take it. Go and blow it in the nations. Position the lion's people for war. Cry to the Creator from the Holy Scroll and give him no rest until we see the captives free and this darkness destroyed. With his help and yours, we will see peace returned to the pastures and hope to the world." The soldier of the desert army came forward. "I will join you. People may believe me when they see how I have been saved." As they rode off into the distance, Joshua breathed deeply and felt his heart stir with hope. As he looked over the border into the desert land, where his precious Sheerel was held by cruel tormentors, for the first time in a long time, he knew his people were not alone.